This has truly been a watershed year in crypto policy. Yeah, okay, good. It's a big deal. It really is a big deal to think that we've come so far. Okay, as you might have guessed, I'm going to say some things that are not so positive. They're going to be negative, and I need an opposite reaction. So here goes. Yes, while it's been a watershed year in crypto policy, in general, there are some very powerful policymakers that really hate crypto and are doing everything they can to kill it. Yeah, exactly. Right. And those policymakers and regulators hate privacy-enhancing crypto even more. Oh, yeah. Okay. I love it. This is going to be fun. Okay. So let me get my slides going here. We're going to cover three things: an overview of the U.S. policy landscape, an update on what Electric Coin Company has been doing to influence U.S. policy, and then how can the Zcash community help with these policy efforts? And then hopefully we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A. Just a quick disclaimer before I move on. I'm an attorney, but my job is policy and advocacy, and I do not practice law. I am certainly not giving any legal advice during this presentation. So as some people say, I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So just to say that before we get started. Okay. All right, I suspect you all are aware that it's been an extremely active year in both policy and litigation and legislation. So let's start with the litigation. On the litigation front, the big news recently is the Ripple ruling. This case has been going on for over 3 years now, and believe it or not, it's still in the early stages. That's a very long time to wait just to get started, but they go through a lot of process and discovery up front that takes a lot of time. So we're at the summary judgment ruling stage, and that means both sides have worked with the court to determine all the facts, and the judge was able to evaluate and decide if there was a question of law or fact that required those issues to be decided at a full hearing. In other words, this is the first hurdle to go over before you actually get to the court and have the court decide things for you. Well, at this summary judgment phase, both parties won and lost on some of the issues. However, by far, the biggest win of this opinion is that the judge clearly states that XRP itself, the token, is not a security, and that is great for the industry. Yes. Thank you. The judge applied the legal test to determine if XRP is a security. Of course, I'm guessing you all know that this is called the Howey test to determine if an investment should be classified as a security. The reason that this is so critical to the industry is that Chair Gensler of the SEC has said that almost all tokens are securities. In addition to that general statement, he has gone forward to sue Coinbase and has specifically said that a number of tokens, and I'll just name them here quickly: Solana, Cardano, Polygon, Cody, Algorand, Filecoin, Cosmos Hub, Sandbox Platform, Axie Infinity, and Decentraland are securities. Yeah, oh man, yeah. So this ruling doesn't have direct effect on Chair Gensler's classification of these tokens, but it certainly suggests he has been wrong for a very long time about how the Howey test should be applied. And it gives exchanges a lot more confidence in trading and allowing those tokens to be traded. And for example, Ripple was relisted on Coinbase almost immediately after this ruling. Yeah. So there's a lot more to this ruling than I have time to cover here, because it was great in many ways, of course, not a win on all points. But it just so happens that I just released a full podcast episode on this ruling, and it's featuring Marissa Koppel. She's the senior counsel at the Blockchain Association. She does a really good job of getting all into the details, and I encourage you all to listen to that. And of course, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about podcasts later. So, but check that out if you want more detail, specifically on Ripple. Okay, moving on. Who remembers the moment last year at Zcon4 when we heard OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, had sanctioned Tornado Cash? Anybody there? I was there, and it kind of changed the last-minute agenda for Zcon4. Okay, so that, of course, is not new news, as that suit was filed on October 12th of last year. To my knowledge, Coin Center has not announced any new developments. Well, actually, they have. Let me just move on here to a second. Okay, so here. So Coin Center recently said on this case that I think they had filed their summary judgment briefing, so that's good. But of course, as we know, it can take a long time to get to summary judgment, so we're looking at potentially 3 years to move along there. Just last week, Coin Center did have some new news, and that is that their challenge to the expansion of 6050I of the tax code was dismissed. Now, that's not good news. Yeah. But they have taken that to appeal, or they're working to take that to appeal. So I expect that we'll have more news on that going forward. And so keep an eye out for any updates there. All right, let's talk a minute about the Coinbase litigation. So here in the Coinbase case, the SEC sued Coinbase, and again, I mentioned it earlier, talked about those 13 different cryptocurrencies that the SEC alleged to meet the Howey test. So again, at the summary judgment stage, a big part of their argument, and I wanted to really mention this because it is it's an argument that I think will play a very big role in how courts determine whether or not the SEC is treating cryptocurrencies correctly or not, is the major questions doctrine. And it's a legal doctrine that guides courts on how to respond to challenges to agency authority. In essence, it says that courts shouldn't presume that Congress gave an agency authority in an area without a clear and explicit legislative grant of authority. So keep an eye out for that, and let's hope that the major question doctrine does prevail and that the SEC loses in this case. Okay. There is a lot of litigation. This was only just a couple that I wanted to mention. Marissa at the Blockchain Association has a long tracker, I think multiple pages worth. So I have a number of them listed, just don't have time to go through them. I'm sure these slides will be available, but needless to say, there's a lot. So if you want to dig in on that, there's a lot of content there too that we just don't have time to go into today. Okay, crypto legislation. It's been an exciting last week, I tell you. It's just been unprecedented, all that has happened recently, building up to new legislation that was introduced through a joint process with the House Financial Services Committee and the House Agriculture Committee, both holding hearings on the same day on crypto legislation, and then just this week going to markup on, I think, both of them did just in this week. So it's been so busy, and there was a number of other pieces of legislation that were also addressed this week. So for those of us who have been in the industry a long time, this is unbelievable. And just to think that you have the key committees in Congress focusing so much time getting legislation through committee. It's remarkable. So let's go through some of them. I also wanted to point out what Kristen Smith said at the Blockchain Association. This week was a milestone for American crypto industry and for the promise of real progress on the path forward on the path toward a working regulatory framework in the U.S. There's a lot of nuance in that I'll try to touch on as we go through these. So the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, the FIT21 Act, as it's referred to, is a bill to delineate SEC and CFTC jurisdiction over crypto assets and bolster consumer protections in the crypto market. It actually turned out to be somewhat bipartisan. There were 6 Democrats that voted in favor of moving this out, and of course it did move out of the committee, the House Financial Services Committee. This is not a perfect bill, and it's not something that even the Blockchain Association is willing to fully endorse. However, it's not done. Even though it has moved out of committee, it will go through a process where it can still be amended before it goes to the House floor, and then it would be amended there, and then, of course, over to the Senate. And while we're on that topic of moving things through the process, the chances that any of this goes through both the House and Senate are very slim. Some of it won't get through the House, most likely. So just keep that in mind. But even though there are a lot of issues here that I think are probably too detailed to go into in this session, the industry, the trade association, the Blockchain Association, wants to give some credit and help move this along, because there's most likely going to be another chance to come back and fix the issues that are there. A couple of the issues that I think you all would care about is that there's just not enough self-custody protection in this bill. There's as it went through the process in the committee, there were some changes that changed the definition of digital assets such that it could have an effect on DeFi. So there's just a lot of work that has to be done there. But it is hugely validating for the industry. Okay, Clarity Act for payment stablecoins. Stablecoins are just hugely important for the industry, and it was great to see this get some really good support, also some bipartisan support. 5 Democrats voted in favor of moving this out of the committee, and it is based on pretty much 5 principles that the Blockchain Association really pushed for. It ensures that these regulations only apply to custodial providers and issuers. There's no bank charter requirements. There's flexibility in how to handle the reserves. There's reasonable operational requirements, and there's no SEC or CFTC authority, which is critical here. So this is a positive development. So now we're getting to the really positive development. This is the really good news that came out of this last week. The Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act it was proposed by one of the industry's true champions, Representative Emmer. This bill would clarify that blockchain developers and service providers who do not take control of a customer's funds, for example, miners and wallet software providers, are not subject to registration and reporting requirements that are applied to money transmitters and financial institutions. So this is just fantastic. It's great to see this move forward. It was entirely partisan, and may not have any chance of ultimate success at this time, but it's great to see it introduced and passed out of committee, and we'll hopefully push that through when it's possible to do so. The Keep Your Coins Act, another incredibly positive piece of legislation from another industry champion, Representative Warren Davidson. This bill would protect the right to self-custody by prohibiting federal agencies from restricting a person's ability to use crypto assets to buy goods and services, conduct transactions through a self-hosted wallet, or hold crypto assets in a self-hosted wallet. So essentially, this affirms an individual's right to privacy in their financial transactions. This is really good. Come on. Okay. I want to make sure you're still there. Thank you. Okay. Now we're getting to a couple that I'm not going to say are bad, but they certainly raise some concerns because of, I think, the motivation that is behind them, and that it's really focused on government's ability to track and trace all financial transactions. So there's the Financial Technology Protection Act of 2023. This would establish a financial technology working group to study and develop recommendations for Congress and regulators to combat the use of new financial technologies, including digital assets, for illicit activity. This passed out of the committee with a unanimous vote. This committee that would be created includes various government agencies, 5 people from the private sector, mostly from like analytics firms and maybe some other places in the blockchain ecosystem. And over the span of 4 years, it would create multiple reports. So that's something to be on the lookout for. All right, final one here to share with you, the National Defense Authorization Act. This one is over in the Senate, so everything else that I've talked about has been in the House. This directs Treasury to adopt processes for examining financial firms' effectiveness in identifying and reporting crypto use of money laundering and terrorist financing. And it also directs Treasury to study and report to Congress on privacy-enhancing technologies, including crypto asset mixers and tumblers, and the extent to which they are used by actors to engage in illicit finance. Again, one to watch out for because it's not so clear that these reports are going to be balanced and focus on the need for privacy in financial transactions. So that's a lot. And again, there's a lot more that I don't have time to cover. Some of what I don't have time to cover is covered by some other groups, one of which is represented here, the ACLU. There are some really bad internet bills that are currently being considered. Fight for the Future and ACLU just last week ran a campaign to stop a series of bad internet bills, including what's referred to as COSA, Earn It, the Restrict Act, Stop CSAM, the Cooper-Davis bill, and other bills that limit access and weaken end-to-end encryption. So I encourage you all to watch what those groups are doing, ACLU, Fight for the Future. Those are also critical to our industry and our work. All right, that was it for litigation and legislation. Thanks for hanging in there with me. That was a lot of content. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what Electric Coin Company has been doing to influence U.S. policy. And I think it's a lot, and I think it's been very effective. Before I start to talk about this, maybe I could just share with you my general approach to how I've been working on this effort. Because it's pretty daunting to say you, as kind of like an individual contributor, are going to affect all of U.S. policy and regulatory to help Zcash and our efforts be successful and to defend privacy. I think it is possible, and I think we have made a lot of progress, and I'm really proud of that. The way I've approached it is because crypto is a relatively new industry, there are a lot of gaps that are just wide open. It is really unusual. I've worked in policy a very long time, and 20 years or so, probably a little more than that, but I think some of you know I did software development 10 years in addition to that, so kind of on the technical policy side always throughout my career. But I've seen what worked. I know what worked. Unlike a lot of the lobbyists and people who come to DC to work on crypto policy, they tend to be new. They tend to not have that background. They might love crypto and want to work on crypto and influence policy, but they don't have the background. So I feel like I was fortunate to come from a special place and actually seeing and knowing what works and what doesn't. What I found that always worked in the past and was consistent with the things I'd done at other very large companies was stakeholder engagement and development and building communities. And There are a number of groups in crypto that are doing that, but it still was just not enough. It was very clear to me it was not enough. So I've really focused on that, and it has been really successful. I've done it under the headline of PGP for crypto, pretty good policy for crypto. This is a term that was used by Electric Coin Company to just host informal breakfasts at conferences and such. I heard this, and somebody suggested, hey, why don't you do a breakfast in DC? And then it hit me, okay, I can take this to a whole new level. So that's what I tried to do. Let's move on here. I can just show you a couple of things. So here is the breakfast. And I think some of you might recognize that guy on the screen, Josh Swihart. He came to a couple of them. I've been doing this monthly for well over a year now, and nobody else is doing anything like it. And it has just kind of like found a special place in the crypto policy ecosystem in DC, and people come. I mean, it's just really fantastic. I run it as a roundtable. It's not all about privacy. It's certainly not all about Zcash. Those things are generally mentioned, and people know that Electric Coin Company is sponsoring it along with the Blockchain Association. So just because I'm doing it and I'm there and I MC it, and I always mention privacy when there's an appropriate time to do so, it helps influence the entire discussion. I really love it, and I'm very proud of that activity and hope to keep that going. I've also been starting to do briefings, some special type of meetings that are separate from the breakfast but similar. So this is an advertisement that we sent out for a congressional briefing that I did in the Capitol Visitor Center, and again, with some support from the Blockchain Association, and helping to spread the word about these things. So this was, in this case, all about privacy-enhancing technologies in crypto. And I had an opportunity to bring in a bunch of other projects working in privacy-enhancing crypto technologies to present. And this was to a room full of staffers. And there it is. And having attended a lot of these briefings in the past, I can tell you that it is pretty darn rare to have a room full of staffers in a Hill briefing. It is not uncommon to have like 5 or 6 people show up. So this was a special event, and I hope to continue to do more of them. In addition to this kind of a special activity separate from the breakfast, last year I did an event on Global Encryption Day. And this was in conjunction with the Internet Society and the Global Encryption Coalition. That is an annual event that I think usually happens towards the end of October. So starting to plan that as well. So that's something that hopefully we'll do. It was just a really special event last year, and hopefully you'll tune into that. By the way, before we go forward from the breakfast and the events, those are all available. I mean, the breakfasts are technically off the record, but for anyone who asks, there is a remote opportunity to join. I would love for this community to join those. If you have interest, you can just listen in if you like and see how they go. So the other thing I've been doing is the PGP for Crypto podcast. And this, I think it was just a void. And that there's a ton of podcasts out there, as you know, ton of crypto podcasts. But I don't know of any other podcast that does nothing except policy, and that is based in DC, and that is in person, and is done in a high-quality way. And that is what I have strived to do here. It was really great to do this with Gary when he was on board, ECC. Hopefully he'll be in a position to continue to work on this at some point in the future. But this is what we've done so far just this year, and I think that I'm going to hopefully continue to push this hard because I think it's really very special, and there's some fantastic content there that I think you all would really enjoy.
Blockchains, to me, are very similar to the internet. They're based on open protocols, whether it's Zcash or Bitcoin or Ethereum. Just like the internet allows for the exchange of data, blockchains allow for the exchange of assets. I would posit that crypto is an online social movement that is inherently political, and it has its roots in libertarian thinking. We know this. Satoshi Nakamoto encoded in the Genesis block, front page of the Times of London, talking about the chancellor on the verge of a second bailout. So what I find super intriguing intellectually and emotionally engaging is crypto culture. What is crypto culture? Crypto is fundamentally a political impulse at its very core. Crypto culture is fundamentally a protest culture. Crypto culture reflects the attributes inherent in the technology itself and the asset class. It's based on open source software. It's based on individual contributions, whether it's intellectual capital or financial capital. It's based on transparency. It's based on free speech. It's based on privacy. It's based on, how can we reimagine the coordination of labor and capital? That's the essence of capitalism itself. It's based on freedom. It is rightfully shining a light on regulatory capture and corruption. These are righteous values. It's why people are so passionate about crypto, and it's why I get up in the morning is to, with my colleagues at Blockchain Capital, back entrepreneurs that want to change the status quo. Right now, we live in a surveillance society. The system, as we know, as it sits right now, is dominated by banking oligopolies, internet monopolies, and I think it's ripe for change. All of our challenges go through Washington, D.C. Now is the time to advocate for our industry and to educate. If we get this wrong, this innovation will happen in Japan. It'll happen in Dubai. It'll happen in the UK. And it is our job as people that care about policy, responsible stewards of intellectual and kind of crypto capital, to do the best job we can educating these elected officials and policymakers. And this is an important moment in time to redefine how the human being and the state, what is that relationship? It's increasingly moderated by technology. And so that technology is increasingly going to be crypto. It's going to be AI. Those are the interesting questions in my mind. How does the state and the individual, how is that relationship moderated by a rapidly evolving technology industry? And that is our shared goal. If you care about crypto, you have to care about what's going on in DC right now. So I would encourage all of your listeners to get involved, to write your congressman, to get up to speed, to think about a donation to Coin Center, to the Blockchain Association, the people that are fighting this fight for us. That is why we all find ourselves in DC right now with the important, and I would argue sacred challenge of educating our policymakers to make sure that America stays relevant and can stay the home of innovation.
So I recorded that just a little over a week ago, and I felt that
It's my great privilege that we have Eric Schmidt here with us today, actually on the topic of blitzscaling.
Okay, that was a YouTube glitch, I think. So I recorded that just a little over a week ago with Bart Stevens, the managing founder and managing partner of Blockchain Capital, a true OG in the industry, started Blockchain Capital in 2013. I just loved the way I felt he captured the essence of the culture of crypto, and he expressed why it's so important for us to work in DC and affect policy in DC. My last thing in the last 30 seconds I have to share with you is I really want your support and involvement. I would love to speak with you if you have interest in this and figure out how you can participate. I would love to have more subscribers to our YouTube channel so that it might get picked up by the algos and spread a little bit more. I need your help, and the industry desperately needs your help. I think this is God's work, and I'm happy to be in a position to do it, and I appreciate all your support. Thank you.